I were serving a church in South Carolina and sort of stepped out in faith due to a number of family issues and a growing family and a desire to be closer to my wife's extended family for additional support. And so we sold our house and packed up and moved west and settled in Canby, Oregon. And this position had not even entered into the CLC, unaware of it. And so in a way, we felt like we were had a kinship with Abraham and Sarah, setting off to a land in which we know not. And I think for most of us, we long for the call process to be a little more clear, a nice stepping stone from one position to the next, where there's not an extended period of unemployment. But for my wife and I, we had a distinct sense that God was calling us to something new, something different, something that was not known. And so we stepped forward in faith. And when I opened the CLC several weeks into settling here in Oregon, this position absolutely jumped off the page for me in a frightening way, in a wonderful way. And so through that process, that is what has brought me here to stand before you. A real sense of connection to the position. If you look through my bio, you'll see I have sort of an eclectic background in ministry. I very much feel committed to the church, feel committed to being a minister, feel very pastoral, and at the same time, I have never found myself drawn to those more traditional patterns of ministry, those positions that I have received so much from and that I believe so much in, but I've always found myself in these alternate ways of living out ministry. And so this position really rose up again as one of those opportunities to serve the church, to more importantly serve Christ through the church, and to do that in new patterns, new ways of connecting people, new ways of caring for people, ways that are not necessarily mapped out for us, but that ways that require connection to one another, ways that require a careful, attentive listening to what God might be doing and what God might be doing that is new within our communities. So it is with great hope and with great faith that I come before you this morning, optimistic about the good work that we can do together, the ways that we can build community, the ways that we can be drawn together to make our churches and communities more hospitable, more engaging, more open to the diversity that I think God intends for the faithful Christian community.
How do we white people encourage diversity and understand that better decisions get made with more voices and more different voices? And I'll leave it at that. So.
June, thank you. That is a wonderful question. And I think it's a question that we need to live into, for lack of a better way of describing it. I think we would all long to have the magic answer where we could just do one thing and suddenly we would have a diverse community that we long to have and that we theologically believe is the core of the Christian community present right here within our presbytery. But I think it is something that needs to be built very intentionally and cultivated over time. And I'm also aware that our Presbyterian polity is very much ground up and not top down. And so I think a lot of the work is going to need to happen within the context of congregations. The primary forward-facing nature of our church is our congregations, the people that fill the pews, the pastors, the elders, the people that open the doors on Sunday morning. And so I think what I would long to do is to work with our churches to figure out how we can be good neighbors in our communities. How can we better learn the needs of our communities in their full diversity, and then help the fullness of those communities, the people that make them up, how can we help them feel not only welcome in our churches, but also like our church has something to offer them, that our church has advocated for them and come alongside them. And so I think a lot of the work is yet to be done. It needs to be lived into, and definitely on a congregational basis. And that's something I'm excited about, working with people to figure out how we can do that more fully and more faithfully.
How do you see this moment of pregnancy in the life of the church, and your place in that moment of pregnancy?
I think to first start with the analogy of pregnancy, and one of the things about pregnancy is it is a season full of hope, but also full of anxiety and uncertainty, because you don't know that everything is going to go cleanly or smoothly or have the result that you hope, which is, of course, a healthy, beautiful new life to nurture and to care for, and to eventually set free upon its own journey. You don't know that those things are not guarantees. And so I think in a similar fashion in this presbytery, there are a lot of wonderful, faithful people that have come together to envision a new thing. And it is not certain. It is not a done process. It is not something that happens in one moment and then it's heading off to college, right? It is something that we are in the throes of labor, and so I am not scared that there is conflict. I think that is a very healthy and important and smart thing for the presbytery to be doing as it considers a new way of posturing itself in this world and living out ministry. And we don't know that the outcome will be that happy, healthy, growing baby. But we have hope. We have hope that it has the potential to be that, and that with birth comes a lot of responsibility and additional effort and additional care, not a job well done and you go home and take a nap now. No, it's stay up all night and feed the baby now. So, I think this really becomes a season where we all need to celebrate the joy and the gift of new life, and also commit to the loving intention of parenting a new life up until it is standing on its own two legs. So I think it's a beautiful, apt analogy for the time that we're in. I don't have a deep background in executive roles within the church. So I think there's really a two-part answer. I think the first part is to say, I believe that I do have a strong aptitude for engaging and training and helping people deal well through the midst of conflict, and also administratively. I have had a lot of roles at larger churches that have required both political delicacy and also a nimbleness of administration. And so I think while I don't have a proven experience to point to, I do also have enough exposure that I feel confident in my ability to learn and grow into these roles. The other piece that I do want to put in there as well is I think one of the other thrusts of this position really is to focus on both pastoral care and network building, and not to be overly absorbed by just the administrative pieces, but to really be able to be a pastor, to be present within congregations and knowledgeable of the lives of the people in this community.
So I would ask you, what kind of experience do you have in leadership development and dismantling the kind of hierarchy that says the pastor's going to come and tell us what to do?
I think a large part of it will be getting up to speed in terms of knowledge. I believe that relationships begin with knowledge. We must know one another, and so it is getting to know the congregations and the people that are present in the pews as to the best of my ability, and then also tapping into the knowledge of folks that are in this room, that folks that aren't in this room but had other things going on, folks that have loved this presbytery through the years, that have a much deeper knowledge of where the leaders are and what kind of support the leaders need. Getting to know those people, hear them, and then help coalesce them. Just like a church can't just hope that the pastor will be the one answer to all their woes and all their problems, I also will not be the one answer to this presbytery, or whoever might fill this role will not be the one answer that this presbytery needs to resolve those questions. I think it is a process of working to help people all see their shared responsibility to help carry the church forward. And I would long to partner with people that have expertise and that have knowledge of this presbytery to engage in that hard work of making sure ownership does reside within the congregations for their work, their life, and their ministry.
So what are the models that you would see for helping pastors to support one another, say, or so that pastors have pastors?
I think that's a great, really at the heart of what this position will be about. And so I've started doing some thinking that I need to also bounce off of some of the other Presbytery leadership and also some of the folks that have been invested in loving this this presbytery and have a better knowledge than I do. At the same time, some of those ideas, certainly I know that there's already groups that this presbytery does foster for new folks coming into the presbytery. And right now, that's, I think, solely a weekend, and then it just sort of drops off. I think that's a very natural, easy area to say, let's not leave this at just a weekend. Let's figure out how we can have a regular group that will continue to meet so that from the very moment you enter this presbytery, you have a committed group that will meet with you, that will pray with you, that will understand your context and hopefully mitigate some of that loneliness that I'm sure we have all experienced at times in our ministry. I think we need to continue to leverage more technology. I know that sometimes doesn't feel like I always feel like it's a little cold to sit down in front of a screen. At the same time, there can be rich conversation, and that can bridge miles and allow us to have deeper connection without having to drive for an hour, drive for 2 hours, drive for 6 hours to get to other clergy and to be more aware of what is going on in their congregations and in their lives. So I think those are some of the things. I'm not sure what kind of resources are available, but I would love, if there are resources available, to be able to help support regular clergy gatherings or church leadership gatherings even, because I hate to limit it to solely clergy unless that's a particular niche in need. But to be able to get groups of people together and pay for their dinners so they can be together sharing a meal, sharing stories of their life without necessarily a particular agenda or item that they have to accomplish beyond caring for and supporting one another. I think there's a lot of fertile soil there for ways to start to bridge those connections and to hear what is actually needed. I don't want to get in the catch where someone at the presbytery is mandating, okay, you have to meet with these 4 people that you don't really like at this time and place. I don't think we benefit when there's not an organic element of it, but how can we foster and encourage those organic connections and get tools and resources so that people can be encouraged and even incentivized to have those meetings? Because I think it's been my experience whenever I do attend something with other clergy like that, it's tremendously encouraging and tremendously enriching and takes out a lot of the feelings of isolation or those pieces. So those are some of the early ideas I have, but I also know that that's something to be worked at and grown into with this position. So, thank you. Also, I remember, and I can't remember the full context, but I remember Roger Nishioka was speaking about some of the ordination vows that are taken by elders and ministers. And there's one that talks about serving with imagination. And he really, I don't know if you've heard Roger speak, he's a fabulous presenter, and he just had us all laughing, but about, we often don't think about imagination being a useful tool to us or even part of our ordination vows, but it is in there. Go back and thumb through and you will find that imagination is indeed something that we have all promised to engage with and to foster and to utilize. And that is, when the young men dream dreams and the old see visions, this is at the heart of imagination. How might the Christian story and God's activity in the world inspire us into new things? And so that's another one of the ordination vows I particularly like.